morning to members of the public. We'll be getting started shortly. The system is just allowing everyone to enter the virtual room for the meeting, and we'll just allow that process to take place for a few seconds to ensure that we have everyone in place.
Commissioner Kalanche is having trouble. I'm going to resend the link, ma'am. It'll just be a moment for her.
Very well, but we will get started. Good morning. It is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. It is 9:30 a.m. and this is a special meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Commissioner Decker?
Here.
Commissioner Goldsmith?
Here.
Commissioner Bonner?
Here.
Commissioner Kalanche will be present shortly, hopefully. Commissioner Soboroff?
Here.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Also present, we have the Chief of Police, the Executive Director, the Inspector General, and the City Attorney, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary. And as noted, Commissioner Kalanche will be joining us shortly, just having some technical challenges. We hope everyone is staying safe and healthy this morning. Today's regular agenda contains a number of items: contracts, grants, reports, and one donation. We have one closed session item today. We will start today, as we have in recent weeks, with the report of the Chief of Police, and then we will have a 45-minute period of public comment. It's a reminder to everyone that public comment will be heard in that singular block. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. And at the request of the speaker can be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. A total of 45 minutes will be allocated for public comment. If you do not have the opportunity to speak today, you can submit written public comment to policecommission@lapd.online. Members of the public are reminded that you can participate in this meeting in one of a number of ways. They are outlined in the agenda, but in case you don't have that in front of you, you can call in and listen. And in that situation, you can not participate in terms of public comment, but you can listen to the presentations. You can submit written public comment, as I just noted, to the email address policecommission@lapd.online. If you have logged into this Zoom meeting, you can participate in public comment by raising your virtual hand. And if you call into the phone number for this Zoom meeting, you can press *9 if you wish to speak on an agenda item. So moving on to today's agenda then, the first item on the report is the report of the Chief of Police. Chief?
Morning, Chief.
Good morning, and Commissioner, the record should reflect Commissioner Kalanche has joined us. Welcome, Commissioner. And we're getting started with the report of the Chief of Police. Thank you.
Yeah, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. So I'm going to cover the 5 different areas that I do each week. The first one being our continued efforts on the development of our racial equity plan. This last week continued on our meetings and outreach and engagement, both internally and externally. Internally, I met with our employee organizations, particularly our OJB, Noble, and ABLE organizations. These are the Black officers and command and staff officers that are assigned to those 3 respective organizations, and had a good conversation relative to the state of relationships, racial equity in the city, within also the department, and also challenging and asking them to help us as individual organizations, help us as we define our process moving forward. Externally, I had a Chief of Police Muslim forum last Tuesday night. Spoke with a number of religious leaders from our Muslim community, and this was a topic there also in which we had some brief conversations, but in that Zoom meeting. But we'll also look forward to them helping us define this term and what the equity, inclusion, and diversion means here in Los Angeles moving forward. Lastly, Commander Flores reached out and attended a meeting with the Shift Summer and Music Festival, which was an engagement and with an online music festival. But she was asked there to speak about reform and racial equity and our outreach efforts to include reaching a non-traditional or less traditional group of supporters of social justice and reform. And we're continuing to seek meaningful engagement and outreach. Regarding our COVID update, we remain, much as the county does, relatively, I'll say, stable. We had an increase of 15 additional COVID positive tests as an organization. That now brings us to 551 of our employees. We have 79 employees that are at home. That number was 80 last week, so it's a reduction of 1. And we have 512 that have returned to work. That number last week was 506. So again, you see the numbers have really flattened out. I want to also report that I believe it's the 10th consecutive week that our academy staff and recruits have all tested negative for COVID-19, our weekly testing and engagement there, so we can continue our engagement of training and development of next generation of police officers during this pandemic, which is a sizable challenge. My thanks and appreciation to Chief Grimala, Chief Baeza, and the entire Commander Flores and the entire staff there for their efforts to safeguard this our employees. The other matter I want to comment on is on a significant events. As I read this morning's paper in the LA Times relative to the department's use of facial recognition technology and a system that's known as Los Angeles County Regional Identification System. And I'll just say in brief that, and I'm certainly available, can respond to questions by this commission, and also are available for us to come back and provide a greater detail as to what this identification, this tool is, how it's used and what investigative purpose it has and what its limitations are. But let me just quickly say that as an investigative tool relative to images and trying to identify still images that we may get from a CCTV camera or a public source such as a victim of a crime, this is a database that allows us to take that image and get clues or tips of people who may be a match. These images that are used are compared against a database of booking photos, arrestee photographs here in LA County. And so the key here is that the algorithm that does this is not based on race or sex, it's based on the contours of a person's face or imagery. But most importantly is that this is only a tip or lead file, that this is not a process that a match, quote unquote, there is no such thing as a match, but these suggestions of potential matches provide investigators with another tool as they attempt to identify individuals that are involved in crimes. Many times these crimes are very serious crimes such as murder, sexual assaults, and robberies. And so this is a process that I have faith and confidence in. It also is one that has controls and have limitations. And again, I want to assure the public and this commission that the basis of this tool is help to identify and bring to justice those responsible many times for serious crimes, but in doing so in a process much like eyewitness testimony that has that we recognize the limitations of it, and that we don't overact on those. Moving from this, again, I'm happy to talk further about this at the commission's discretion. But moving over to crime statistics, as a reminder, we post our crime statistics online each week now, and we still have an overall reduction of 8.5% in Part 1 crime. We still have an overall violent crime reduction of 5%, and the arrests are down in both violent crimes, property crimes, and overall crimes. A portion of this is attributable to to officers exercising greater discretion on lower level matters, the zero bail, an aspect of exercising that discretion rather than incarcerating and putting a person potentially at risk for COVID. We'll move over to officer involved shootings. This last week, there were no officer involved shootings or categoricals. We have a total of 19 officer involved shootings this year. That number was 19 last year. We have 5 fatals this year. That number was 8 last year. And our traffic stats continue to be double-digit reductions in each of our categories. Our personnel strengths are also posted online. We today have 9,878 sworn personnel in the organization and just over 3,000 civilians at 3,017. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Chief. If I could turn to, I'll ask a question to and open it up to commissioners. Of course, if anyone wants to jump in ahead of me, I'll just signal to me. I'm happy to do that. But Chief, if I could ask you a few follow-ups on the facial recognition software and its use by the department, and thank you for your presentation. But as you know, there's have long been some, particularly in recent years, privacy concerns and concerns about misidentification, particularly when it comes to community of colors. And there have been a lot of studies to that effect, and different cities are taking different approaches. I wonder, Chief, if you could provide more information about how it's used by the department, the oversight that exists. And you talked, I believe, about how it is not singularly used for pursuing a case, but it is part of the investigation. But if you could provide a few more details, particularly as to the oversight within the department, it would be helpful.
So, thank you for the opportunity. So first of all, the access to the system, it's an electronic system. It's on a desktop in our network, but the access is controlled to those individuals who have received training. This past June, that number was just over 325 individuals, I believe, and each of them have received training as to the purpose of the system, its limitations. This is a right to know, need to know type inquiry, meaning that it needs to be based on a criminal investigation. This is not to be based on just a general identification or a fishing expedition per se, but tied to a specific criminal investigation by an investigator that then has received training and is authorized to be a user. There is a login system that tracks access to the system, by whom and for what purpose. And then the oversight is that if there would be an accusation of misuse, or it would constitute misconduct, and it would obviously be a personnel matter that we would pursue that. This use of this system is not done in secret, meaning that there's agencies all throughout LA County that practice similar use of it. This is actually an LA County system as far as this regional identification system of these mugshots or booking photos that again, investigators from throughout various agencies access. Once the inquiry is made of a still image, and we do not use images from body-worn video, we do not use crowdsourcing, or we don't survey crowds and then attempt to use a system to identify those individuals. This is a crime-specific investigative tool. Once the inquiry is made, the system returns back potential images that could be related, and the investigators are taught, and the expectation and the requirement is that then additional evidence or corroboration is brought and needed in order to proceed as far as using that image hit as a potential clue that this person is involved in criminal activity. Examples of its use, this last year, there was a robbery, or that turned into a murder investigation in San Fernando Valley that had CCTV cameras in the store that presented investigative images, if you will. That detectives used access to the system, came up with a series of clues or potential connections of booking photographs that eventually developed and narrowed down and identified the person we believe responsible for that murder. This may be a reminder to you that this was an officer-involved shooting that this commission evaluated just a few weeks ago. That was an outgrowth. So that is a path, if you will, of attempting to identify suspects or individuals that are responsible for crimes, for violence, and by using a database of individuals that have been previously arrested, not convicted, but images as potential matches. But again, the limits of this is that those are potential matches only, much like a use of a mug book or use of a photo array for eyewitness testimony does not form the entire basis of a criminal complaint.
Very well, thank you, Chief. Colleagues, I intend to ask at the conclusion of the Chief's report and public comment on this and other matters for the subcommittee of the commission that works on data and analyzing data to do a deeper dive on this and work with the department in terms of analyzing the the oversight mechanisms of this system, but also look at what other cities have been doing with respect to this. I'm aware a number of cities have taken different actions. Of course, the state of California prohibits the use of body worn for purpose of facial recognition, but I think it's a good time to take a global look at this issue and to have the subcommittee do a deeper dive on this and bring back to the commission whatever might be necessary. But with that, why don't I open it up for further questions on the chief's report? Mr. Soboroff, I see you have your hand, sir.
Chief, along the same line, over the years, I've been familiar with the program, and also was comparing it to the program in New York, saw how their program worked. You've explained the limitations, which I think are extremely important. There's reminds me of the drones. There are very few circumstances under which this can be used. But there was some sort of miscommunication here, and that was someone said or was interpreted to say that we don't use it. And have you found out what the misinterpretation was or the misstatement was, so we can just clear that up and get down to if we want to re-review the whole program and look at it and et cetera, that's fine. But let's go to the heart of this thing, and that is, was there a misstatement, or was there a misinterpretation or miscommunication?
I think there was a misunderstanding. Whatever miss we want to discuss here, clearly, as the reporters from the LA Times inquired of the organization as to the use of facial recognition, the context in which we responded, has been described to me, was in the context of the California Assembly Bill 1215. And this was a matter over this last year that dealt with as Commissioner Decker indicated, the state prohibiting law enforcement agencies from using images from body-worn video and a facial recognition profile and system, and something that LAPD does not do. And so this is a concern that has risen from the use of, for instance, body-worn videos on officers during protests, and which those officers are required to have those devices on. Are we now identifying with facial recognition protesters that are on site? And the answer is no. So those are the types in the context of that. What we did not do a good job of was identify that we do have this tool that we use as an investigative tool to identify potential individuals that may or may not be the individual depicted in an image. That the image itself has its own challenges as far as a full identification, but its comparison using this algorithm is imperfect. And we recognize that the challenges are out there, and that's why it can't be a sole determiner. We should have brought that forward more aggressively or in a more forthright manner. And I regret that misunderstanding occurred. It was not meant to hide or shield or obscure our involvement with this. It's widely known in law enforcement circles, right, of the use of this tool. And this tool has existed for the last 15 years, where we generate what's called mugbook arrays or photo arrays as a means of comparisons. And it grew into this more advanced use as an investigative tool, but it has severely limited because it is, as I said, it's just a tip or a lead of a potential involvement.
Is that it, Commissioner Soboroff?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Bonner.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. I'm going to reserve most of my comments for the subsequent look that Commissioner Decker described, but a couple of questions. And I do recall this came up, or I somewhat recall it coming up also in our discussions around the drone capabilities. And I think there was some discussion of it around the Predpol and predictive policing as well. So it's, I think, going to be important to just kind of clean it all up in terms of what the understanding is, and sometimes if you don't ask the right question, you don't get the right answer, and let's just make sure that we clear it all up. The one question is, whose command? You mentioned that I think there's some 300 officers or so that are trained and use the technology, but ultimately, whose command is this come under? Who's from a control standpoint, who's really responsible for monitoring access and utilization?
So it's out of our ITB, our Information Technology Bureau, has the actual system access to it, and then our chief detectives. So Deputy Chief John McMahon out of ITB, and then the functional use of the system, its tools, its limitations, its aspects of how we actually use it investigatively is out of Deputy Chief Chris Pitcher out of Chief Detectives.
And is there ever any sharing of the information with other agencies?
No, well, this Los Angeles County Regional Identification System is actually a regional system that we have a portal or an access into, as these other agencies do. The other matter is there's been some question about whether private industry or non-law enforcement officers have access to this, and the answer is they do not. This is a law enforcement sensitive database. We do share information with a criminal investigation. If we have suspects or individuals we believe responsible for crimes, we may share that information, but it's not through this LARSIS or this LA County Regional Identification System. We query it, we ask a question of it, it gives us a back, and that forms investigative work and files for us to work through for further steps.
Got it. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything further? You're done, Commissioner Bonner? Okay, thank you. Any further questions from commissioners before we move to public comment? Seeing no hands. Thank you, Chief, for your report. Madam Secretary, let's move to the public comment portion of our meeting, and let's begin with the speakers in queue.
Our first speaker is Summer Verano, followed by Jenny Haggerty.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
I would like number 1 and number 2.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm calling in today because I would like to express my support for Chief Moore and for funding LAPD. I would also like to express that I am in total disagreement in reducing the number of police officers patrolling the streets because of reimagining, which is also known as defunding the police movement. Based on the chief's report and the crime statistics, although arrests are down, I noted that the crime stats of homicides and shootings are up. So as a concerned citizen of the city of Los Angeles, that would just lead me to believe or to understand that there are still perpetrators of violent crimes who are out there on the streets. I understand that there are many callers who provide comment, but they have never lived or worked in the city of Los Angeles, but I do. I grew up in a gang-infested area of Los Angeles back when crime scenes were not cleaned up, and every morning I was greeted with the sights of body chalk outlines and drawing pools of blood from the most recent rage of violence. This was as I was walking to school every morning. My desire as a child was that LAPD would more frequently patrol my streets so gang members would stop selling drugs on my footsteps and residents stop shooting one another. I was scared to go to sleep at night, but I was also concerned that my family and my neighbors were powerless in voicing their support of increased patrols at that time. I currently work with families in similar communities, and they experience the same fears that I did decades ago. I want the commissioners to understand the fact that not all persons of color want to see fewer officers patrolling the streets. And I also want commissioners to grasp that the citizens in Los Angeles are powerless in neighborhoods to speak because of radicalized movements that are demanding defunding of police.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Jenny Haggerty, followed by Kevin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
Great, thank you. I want to speak on general comments.
Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, I just wanted to say hello to everyone here today, and I wanted to thank you for giving me some time to speak. I wanted to say that I fully support the LAPD. I personally would like to see the millions of dollars that have been removed from the department to be redirected back to the LAPD. I also, like the previous caller, have attention on the crime statistics regarding homicides and shootings. I am concerned about general public safety, and I am concerned about my family, friends, and neighborhood safety. I think funding the LAPD will only strengthen the officers, and it will strengthen the effective and helpful departmental programs that they have in place. I want to defend the police. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Kevin, followed by T.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
I just want to speak on general comments.
Okay, 1 minute.
So as his last speaker as well, defending the police is a must in our society, especially in LA. The crime has gone up tremendously, which is putting fear into even minority communities, even though certain minorities or could be radical groups would say to go and defund, but that does go and put these minority communities in harm's way. LAPD does go in and have a big standing point in helping minority communities being safe on gang violence, and people that are just standbys that do go in and feel the wrath of gang violence. I think that we should be having heavily patrolled enforcement through these kinds of communities to go and get guns and drugs off the streets that can go in and affect young children and youth and adolescents. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have T, followed by Betty Lay. T, you're on. Okay, we'll come back to T. We'll have Betty Lay, followed by Jamie Garcia.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
1 and 2, please.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. First off, I really appreciate and really pleased with the chief's report. Talk about being clear on what needs to be done. As I've said in past weeks, that the chief of police can only give recommendations. If you're going to be transparent, it needs to come from city council and the mayor. I attend those virtual meetings, but I'm never allowed to speak. But I happen to know that representatives from city council and the mayor's office sit into commissioners meetings, so I know they can hear me. And also in public comment, I'd like to thank all those that have been attending with positive remarks. We really need that. And I defend LAPD, and I thank you for your time.
Madam Secretary, I believe Ms. Lay's completed her comments. Can we move on to the next speaker, please?
Okay, next speaker is Jamie Garcia, followed by Gina Viola.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
1 and 2, please.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I think what we're seeing now is confirmation of what we've always known in regards to the architecture of surveillance. I think misunderstanding can really be disproven by SIPRA 194995, where it specifically states all documents, reports, or analysis current or future use of facial recognition software. So we were very clear that you could be using software, not the actual tech on any kind of device. And this is the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition's SIPRA. And there were no documents turned over. In fact, we asked what other entities were you sharing information? And so you said the regional identification system was a portal access. So we should actually be getting documents. So I'm glad this is very clear now, and you'll be giving us these documents unless you need to speak to your discovery section and let those officers know or civilian staff know that you are actually using this technology. So this is no mistake, misunderstanding. This is a complete lie again to the community about how you are using surveillance technology on us. Yes, very much so. It misidentifies people, so puts people at harm's way of engaging with you, which often leads to our arrest or our death. And again, it's an arbitrary way for you to cover with the veneer of science going after community members. So we absolutely reject any use of surveillance technology like facial recognition. It should be absolutely dismantled and banned use in LA and in the state of California. And for the folks that are calling in saying that LAPD has been defunded, you need to do your math. You need to understand that the Community Safety Partnership Program has just received tons of funding. There is no defunding that has happened. You obviously don't know how to count. And second of all, we're going for all of it. So be prepared. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. And it looks as though T dropped off. If T raises their hand, they'll be allowed to speak again. Next speaker is Gina Viola, followed by Cheryl S.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
1 and 2, please.
2 minutes.
45 minutes is a disgrace. I want to know how many people are waiting to speak who will not get the opportunity to speak to you today. Suppression of public input must stop. The latest round of bad press the LAPD is suffering relates to how we are being surveilled and targeted by the LAPD, and how the LAPD continually lies about it to the public, to the press, to anyone, to this commission. Just like you've lied about broken windows, just like you've lied about laser, just like you've lied about gang databases. All of these things have been exposed by the groups who continue to come here week after week to tell you what is happening. Groups like Stop LAPD Spying, groups like Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, groups like LA Community Action Network, White People for Black Lives. We all come week after week. We're not just showing up here now to call in and tell you not to defund the police. We absolutely need to defund the police. And this lie that you are spewing now that the police has in some way been defunded, Commissioner Decker, you went to great lengths last week to point out numbers and $154 million here and another $50 million there to make it look like the LAPD has been defunded by $204 million. What a bunch of bag of lies, more lies. That money has just been redistributed to Community Safety Partnership, which is riddled with corruption, given that now you have Commissioner Calanche on this board who is tied to the CSP program. So once again, not only is the LAPD rooted in corruption, but its oversight body continues to put people on it that are already tied to police. How can you possibly be the oversight for a body that you are working with?
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Cheryl S. followed by MT.
I would like to speak on Chief's report, item C, item E, and general comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
According to the crime statistics, there are over 100,000 less contacts year to date this year versus last year. As a citizen of Los Angeles, it concerns me that officers have less public contact now. Observation police work is one of the best ways to stop crime from happening. Why are there less public contacts? Is it because there are less police patrolling, or are police extra cautious of being unfairly scrutinized? Agenda item C. I agree with the funding being directed to the DNA Backlog Reduction Program grant. It is important to reduce the backlog. It may help to solve cold cases, and it will get more bad guys off the streets. Updated equipment should be part of any modern police force. Agenda item E. Implicit racial bias training. I know someone who had to take the training after the Rodney King riots back in the 90s, and it significantly damaged the morale then. My understanding is the morale is already low right now, and this will contribute to bringing it even lower. The money would be better utilized by supplying the department with better vehicles and higher quality equipment. I want to say thank you to the Foothill Division. This past week, they took down an illegal casino that was a magnet for criminal activity, specifically armed robbery and stolen cars. Then the next day, an officer pulled out a disabled man from a car engulfed in flames, saving his life. This is brave and commendable. I don't want any defunding because I'm concerned it will make my neighborhood and my family less safe. I want the $150 million returned to LAPD. I do not support reimagining our police department, which we all know is another word for defunding. I do, however, agree with other community leaders that called in to the recent Police Commission Community Forum regarding the importance of churches and LAPD partnering with them to make our city safer. Again, thank you, Chief Moore, for enforcing laws, not health mandates, and not arresting pastors, in particular, Pastor John MacArthur. The First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The citizens of Los Angeles hope LAPD will uphold the law and maintain order. Defend, not defund LAPD. Thank you and God bless you. I yield my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have MT followed by Susan B.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Just general comment, please.
Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to the Chief of Police. Chief Moore, you're doing a good job. We know your job is not easy. People are so quick to criticize and judge. I'd like to see those people spend a day in your shoes or any police officer's shoes. I don't think they'd last a minute. So thank you for all you do. Please keep supporting our police officers that risk their lives every single day. And to the communities members who call and say, I want, and defund the police. How about this? Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Maybe these community people need to start really giving back to their own community and making sure their communities are safe. Instead of defunding the LAPD, how about defending the LAPD? That when any community member needs assistance, who are they to call first? Oh yeah, the police. So thank you for all you do. Thank you to our men and women in blue. Please do not defund the LAPD.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Susan B, followed by Heather C.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
I just have a public comment.
Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, first off, I want to thank you all for your continued service to our community. I and many of my fellow community members are adamantly opposed to any defunding measures. At our recent neighborhood watch meeting, I learned crimes are increasing in my area. Not arresting criminals does not mean that crime rates are dropping. Statistics show that police brutality is not the issue the left portrays it to be. The problem is more of an accountability and responsibility in many communities themselves. Defunding the police will not solve this issue. In fact, it will leave many communities more vulnerable than before. I want to say that defunding the police for such things as racial equity appears to be nothing more than political pandering and appeasement of the very groups which are currently victimizing our society. We do not need our police force reimagined. Ours is one of the best forces in the nation. We need our police to protect and serve and uphold the law, and you need to support them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Heather C, followed by LT.
Good morning, commissioners. I hope that the commission has taken action on the complaint that I lodged last week.
Heather, what items would you like to speak on?
Oh, sorry about that. Items 1 and general comments.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. If an official investigation is not conducted by the Inspector General, I'll be escalating this issue to higher higher governmental entities and will CC my press contacts in those complaints. I will not allow the commissioner or mayor to shield anyone in a position of power consistently uses their influence to line their pockets and also attack LAPD. The LA Times article about facial recognition was disgusting and, as usual, full of half-truths. The Times has an agenda and they know damn well what they're writing and doing. They pick and choose what they want to report with information that they discover and are given. I'd like to see Josh Rubenstein issue a statement each and every time the Times lies, not only laying out each lie, but also calling out the author. Perhaps he would be more proactive about things like this if his salary were paid by LAPD and not Mayor Garcetti. I fully support facial recognition in any tool that helps law enforcement apprehend criminals. I support LAPD, the officers, and Chief Moore 100%. They're doing God's work in a city of politicians who are pandering to an evil organization with an agenda that includes financial benefit and that also brainwashes its followers into thinking that their only intent is to help Black lives. I would also like to give my full support to the Police Foundation. They are an amazing foundation that has provided incredible support and equipment to LAPD and Chief Moore and commissioners. I hope that you will do the right thing by continuing to support them. LAPD needs all the financial support they can get right now. Thank you. I yield my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have LT followed by Bandios. LT, what items would you like to speak on?
Hi, I would like to make a general comment.
Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, first of all, I would like to say thank you to all our LAPD officers and Chief Moore. You have been doing a wonderful job to protect the society safe, to protect our communities. And I want to give personal stories. I actually work at the safest neighborhood on Bunker Hill. And one day I got mugged. The crime statistical in our neighborhood is actually very low, probably the lowest. And still in this safest neighborhood in downtown LA, I got robbed. And till this day, after 1 year, my arm still hurt. With fighting the robber. And also one night I heard gunshots and from Wells Fargo here. Again, it's on Bunker Hill, the safest neighborhood. So even before this.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Bandios and then we have T. Bandios, what items would you like to speak on?
Did we lose the speaker?
It looks like we may have. I'll come back to Bandios.
Let's move on to T then.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, T.
Hello.
T, what items would you like to speak on?
GE, the chief's report and public comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, suppression of public input must stop. Where are the rest of the stolen guns bought by your officers? The gun store manager gets charged, but your officers walk it off. LAPD corruption. Donations from the LA Police Foundation. No donations from the LA Police Foundation until they are investigated. They should not have applied. LAPD should not have applied to train other police throughout state on standards to stop implicit bias, racial profiling. Tell the state peace officers standard training post LAPD's record of racial profile metro stops and falsifying entries in the DANG database show that they cannot train others. Conflicts of interest like money from the LA Police Foundation and Commissioners I don't know how to say her name, Kalanchi, taking money from CSP and having the LAPD officer on her board. As far as the police chief's report, so he talks to a few colonized Black and Muslim officers for overall basis of racial equity, reform, and social justice. This is a fake attempt to have a so-called fake and balanced system. You cannot reform evil. It needs to be abolished. Facial recognition is an invasion of privacy and goes against our constitutional rights. It's racially biased program. Also, a prime example of that is the 2 deputies that got shot and they falsely arrested a black man for the crime. Crime is down by 5% in the last week. Why are arrests up? 8 people have been murdered by LAPD and LA Sheriff's Department since George Floyd. And all those people calling in weren't even on topic. Good job with your propaganda machine. Good day. And defund the police.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please move to the speaker. Bandios, if available. If not, then
Hi, Ben Dios. What items would you like to speak on?
Hi, I would like to speak on all of them, including public comments, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody. I just want to say happy Tuesday. Everyone is well. That is great to hear as usual. Just want to talk about some stats here. Think about the Tuskegee study. Please look that up. Then let's also think about the fact that we have police forces that have hidden gangs that intentions is to hunt Black and brown people. Just think about how severe that is. That is 2000, we're in 2020, and we still have gangs inside police freaking forces that whole intentions is to hunt Black and brown people. And they celebrate with tattoos and parties. Wow. Then now we're talking about we need more surveillance and drones and facial recognition, and only a certain group of people is going to have access to it. Pretty sure those people are probably going to be white too. This is just ridiculous from so many different levels. Long story short, unbelievable. This is going to continue. There's going to be numerous meetings that go on, and nothing's going to change. But I do want to say, for the record, at least I said it. And that's good to know. I had my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Steve Rogers, followed by, Steve Rogers dropped off. John Avalos Rios, followed by Paula Miner. John Avalos, can you unmute on your end, please?
Hello? Hello?
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
The chief report and general comments.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Hi, everybody. Hold on, I kind of lost my notes. Hold on, here it is. The chief report, all his, those white folks that are calling in his support today, they all worry about guns, but the chief's report says nothing about the guns that he is controlling. I think his own cops, they like that there's a lot of guns out there and stolen guns, so they can keep some in their trunk so they can plant it on young kids. So the chief needs to get rid of the guns in the community. Those white people are right. What happened to Melina, Chief Moore? What happened to Melina? Didn't a bunch of your cops raid her house? Did you ever explain what that was all about? Finally, I want to say, Eileen Decker, you changed the format so that your new Zoom meetings for the quote unquote advisory board, the mayors, your Zoom meetings, I cannot get on. Is there a new Zoom code? Why don't I know that? Have you intentionally created this new discussion group and you don't want none of us there? We have been coming to your meetings for 3 or 4 years, since Waukesha Wilson, since John Horton. You know, we're coming because we want to see justice. We want to see accountability. All these white folks that are suddenly calling in, they don't care about the dead Black and brown kids. They do not care. They would love it if police killed more Black and brown people. Can you believe that? Can you believe that, Eileen? Eileen, I am so hurt. I am so hurt. I am depressed the way you have excluded us from these meetings, and you only provide for.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Paula Miner, and then we have Steve Rogers.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief report, item E, and public comment.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yeah. In response to the chief's report, again, he talks and talks about things that are not reality. In addition to that, he also lies. You know, LAPD has denied using facial recognition over a number of years. It has been approximately 10 years that they have been using that technology. And so when people make public records requests, when people ask about it, they lied. And we need to be clear about that. Chief Moore tries to say they didn't understand the question. They lied. And when Chief Moore goes out and talks to groups saying he's trying to, I don't know if he's trying to spread racial equity, discover racial equity, or what he's doing. But again, his department, they promote a culture of violence. We talk about the guns that were purchased illegally from the LAPD gun store. There were, I believe, between 20 and 30, 11 of them they still have not found, that they charged the manager of the gun store, but all the officers who purchased illegal guns are permitted to just walk it off, forget it. Now, this particular example shows that officers are not held accountable. You know, if you buy illegal guns, if you beat up someone, if you lie, you steal, and ultimately when you shoot someone, you will not be held accountable if you are an officer in Chief Moore's LAPD. And then I just like to talk about that item E. Even though it's a small amount of money compared to the millions LAPD gets, they asked to be trainers for other law enforcement agencies in the state of California and to train others on the negativity of implicit bias and racial profiling. This is such a farce. LAPD's racially profiled Metro stops, their falsification of entries into the gang database show that they are excessively guilty of implicit bias and racial profiling. The fact that they would even lie in their application is just amazing. And we will contact POST, which is the State Peace Officer Standards and Training Group, and let them know, even though it's a small grant, these are not the people who should be training others. And again, we are restricted from comment. You know, only the people that Decker and the system allows to talk, get to talk. Others have to send in emails. This is preferential treatment. There are a lot of people who need to comment on what's going on in this particular commission. And we still have those potential conflicts of interest, especially with our newest commissioner getting CSP money and having a police officer on the board. And we still want an investigation of the Los Angeles.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next, we have Steve Rogers, followed by Tanya Martinez.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Yes, items 1 and 2. And I just want to start off by saying I did not drop off. I did not lower my hand. I raised my hand at the very beginning of this meeting. I've also raised my hand at previous meetings and have never gotten a chance to speak until now. I think on a point of transparency, there should be somewhere an indicator of how many people are attending this meeting Many Zoom meetings have that feature. I think that's important. And we should also know how many people are in the queue who are actually trying to speak. To give people 3 minutes when there's limited time, only 45 minutes, either you have to increase the amount of time or you have to divide it among the people that are trying to speak. Those are procedural things I think that need to be fixed. And let me start off now with my actual comment. I am pro-police. Nobody supports the police more than I. I live in the city of Los Angeles. I actually walk the streets of the city of Los Angeles. I'm not a professional political agitator. I hear people come on here week after week with their racial nonsense. And I mean nonsense. People that talk about how LAPD targets communities of color, which I don't even like that term, communities of color. LAPD focuses on behavior. The problem is that we should defend the LAPD. We should have policies that actually make them more proactive. They are backing down because they are not being supported by the mayor, who I call Rat-City, and other people who are elected that are not supporting the police. The rank and file patrol officers need to be supported because they are trying to do the right thing. They are disengaging because the system is not backing them up. And that includes the LAPD disciplinary system. People need to educate themselves about what's really going on and stop about the racial division and propaganda. And the next time I speak, I'll speak more on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Tanya Martinez, followed by Audrey George.
I'd like to speak on the chief's report and on public comment.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Commissioners, I wanted to address the spike in crime that's happening in LA right now. To us, it's just data on a screen, but to others, this is impacting and devastating their lives, especially for those who live in South LA, where violent crime statistics are off the charts. This is the reality of the Los Angeles we're living in. Property crime is up, attacks on officers are up, and shootings are up. What does this tell you about the condition of our city? It tells you that criminals are running the show. We are not in a position right now where we're making the residents feel safe. City leaders are being more vocal about racial injustice and protecting the rights of protesters who in fact don't even live in the city than they are about protecting the people who pay taxes and live in the city. The real victims are the hardworking residents of Los Angeles. I would like to ask our commissioners, why are we still thinking of further defunding the LAPD when we're faced with these statistics? On the contrary, the commission and city leaders should be doing everything they can to address this rising crime, to increase police resources in these areas, because this is an injustice to the residents who have to live with these consequences every day. Quality of life is a basic human right that our residents deserve. If you just look outside, the city is in disarray. There's tents everywhere. I've seen piles of trash that have been left sitting in the same place for over 2 months now. Commissioners, have you actually stepped into the streets that are seeing this explosion in crime? Please leave the comforts of your home to actually spend a day in South LA, walking the street corners, the alleys, visit the projects, and talk to the residents. If you go, you'll see mothers afraid to let their kids play in the streets because criminals are being emboldened by what's going on. Please, our residents deserve better. Thank you for listening, and please choose to put.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Audrey George, followed by WM.
Yes, I want to speak on the chief's report, general comment, and items through A, B, and D.
3 minutes.
Okay, item 3B is funds for LAPD to provide port security to come from DHS outside of its own budget. 3D is funds for de-escalation of use of force training to come from outside LAPD's own budget. 3A, contracts with Axon for LAPD equipment and technology to be paid from the city budget. All of these items must not receive your approval, as they are workarounds that reflect a total lack of intent to meet community demands for the defunding of LAPD, that reflect a total disregard of demands for passage of and adherence to the people's budget. We demand a budget that reflects our moral values and which results in less policing. Giving money to Axon from the city's general fund reveals LAPD's clear intent to show that the city council's promise to reduce its budget is a farce because LAPD can be funded by means outside of money allocated to it by the city's budget. The chief's report, racial equity plan, discussions that have no input and engagement for community members who come to these meetings every week are not legitimate. What is meant also when you refer to less traditional social justice advocates? For anyone who wonders why the community fights against LAPD using drones and all surveillance technology with such fervor, it's about mission creep and lack of transparency and accountability. Even Soberov noted the link between this new facial recognition scandal and the drones. As we read in yesterday's article, but already knew from Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, in the past decade, LAPD has used facial recognition software through a regional database maintained by the sheriffs nearly 30,000 times, and use was stepped up during the last 6 months. This means hundreds of officers running images of suspects from surveillance cameras and other sources. The cops using the Safe LA task force, the cops using this include the Safe LA task force that was formed this past June to conduct investigations for significant crimes during protests and demonstrations. LAPD has consistently denied having records related to facial recognition and at times denied using the technology at all. Commissioners, did you already know this, even though Assistant Chief Frank and official LAPD liar person Josh Rubenstein and officials and responses to CIPRAs have unabashedly and repeatedly lied to you and the public? No room for misinterpretation in their lies. In fact, just today, Moore tried to deflect our attention from this. Has PC been complicit in keeping these facts from the public, or have you believed the lies? Why do facts get revealed only when successive rounds of public records requests are filed? Researchers have learned not to accept the claims in records requests because they are often debunked upon further investigation. We want use of this technology stopped at once, as it has been in San Francisco and other cities. Also, you need to listen to every community member who wants to speak, even if, God forbid, it means your meetings will last a little bit longer and your jobs won't be so easily dispatched.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have WM followed by Zach Sherwin.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
The chief's report and general comment, please.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Good morning. I'd like to express my concern over the recent reallocation of funds from the LAPD. Per the chief's report, homicides and shootings are rising, yet arrests are falling. I fear for our communities and for our safety. The anti-police narrative flies in the face of the actual statistics. With 1.7 million public contacts last year and a mere 0.001% of contacts resulting in justifiable officer-involved shootings, this is not an out-of-control department fixated on murdering citizens, as the opposition would have you believe. LA officers are under attack and being asked to do more every day with far less than their counterparts across the nation. It is simply unconscionable to take resources away from the men and women tasked with protecting in the face of consistent, vicious, and violent attacks. I implore you to offer your complete and total support to the department, stop defunding and reimagining public safety, protect our communities, we deserve it, and honor and respect the brave men and women who are selflessly serving the city of Los Angeles. Defend, not defund the LAPD. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Zach Sherwin, followed by Christina Ruiz.
I would like to speak on the chief's report, public comment, and item 3G.
3 minutes.
Chief, I know from your Twitter account, as well as your leaked text messages, that you're a man of faith. So to paraphrase Proverbs 12:22, those who act faithfully are God's delight, but lying lips are an abomination to the Lord. LAPD denied for years that you were using that facial recognition technology, and now you give that truly laughable spin response. And it is only because this commission generally sucks and doesn't do its job, and Steve Soberov lobs softball questions at you. Was that a misinterpretation or just an innocent misstatement? It's just because of that that your head isn't rolling. You should be embarrassed, though I don't give you that much credit. One article you didn't mention in your report is the September 15th LA Times article headlined "Former Gun Store Manager at LAPD Academy Charged with Stealing More Than 20 Guns," and no mention of the 11 still missing guns mentioned in that article. I also noticed that you didn't mention the September 19th LA Times article headlined "Video Shows LAPD Officers Shooting Protester in Groin at Close Range." And I know you're an avid reader of the leftist publication Knock LA, so I'm surprised you didn't mention their September 21st article entitled "LAPD Officer Keeping Canine Unit Dogs Caged for Days at a Time." This is all in the past week. You are absurdly incompetent as the leader of this fatally flawed and broken-ass police department, but you are all too effective at enforcing lethally racist policing practices. Also, your officers don't wear masks. Also, you said that George Floyd's death was on the hands of protesters. It's too bad for LA and lucky for you that you don't work in a city where you might face some meaningful accountability. On to public comment. While I love hearing all these book reports from cop lovers who call in, I want to encourage you to practice reading the statements that somebody else wrote for you before you come in here and stammer all over yourself trying to say it. Where were you guys for the past several years? Commissioner Decker, you are suppressing public input. This 45-minute public comment period is a sham. Not letting people speak after every agenda item is a disgrace. Your community forums are absurd. This oversight body is broken. Commissioner Kalanche has conflicts of interest. She doesn't belong on this board. And Commissioner Decker, you let these cop lovers ramble on and on and on. You never tell them they're far afield like you have done to people criticizing the police for so long. What agenda items are they speaking to? As far as item 3G, don't approve donations from the LA Police Foundation. Fire Chief Moore, you guys are, it is truly, truly dismaying that these are the people who are in charge of LAPD. Citizens' voice in public affairs, my butt, which Chief Moore can put his lying lips right on the cheeks of. That concludes my remarks.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Christina Ruiz, followed by Andrea C.
Hello.
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
Item 1 and 2, please.
Okay, 2 minutes.
I just would like to say that the population for LA City is about 4 million. We have 9,800 officers, which 64% are minorities. I'm listening to all the previous callers who sound extremely delusional and do not understand our police force at all. They cover 468 square miles. Also, looking back at the 13 cities that have defunded their police departments, crimes have shot through the roofs. Community policing has suffered and also prevention programs have suffered. These 13 cities, Minneapolis, New York, Portland, Baltimore, Detroit, Seattle, just to name a few, have seen their violence escalate where people are fleeing their cities, and that's what's going to happen to the city of LA. I love my city of LA. I love going down there, going to see concerts, sports events, dinners, living down there, being amongst my people. But with defunding the LAPD, you are killing us. With the stats of homicides increasing, shootings, we are scared to leave our place of residence, to go to businesses, and especially for those businesses that have already been looted, we don't see them coming back. We want to let you know that as you defund our LAPD, police manpower will plummet, more crimes will go unsolved, community outreach will dwindle, and cops that are left will be forced to work high amounts of overtime. And worst of all, wait times for 911 calls will rise. There is no decision or basis for your cutting it because you have left us with no alternatives, nothing in place to handle this. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you, Police Moore. You have such a challenging job, but we want to let you know that you have so many supporters out there walking the streets of LA, rooting for you and your police department. I yield my time.
Thank you. And the next speaker will be our last speaker, Madam Secretary.
Okay, Andrea C.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Hi, the chief's report and general comment.
Okay, 2 minutes.
I want to point out that the sworn personnel by rank, gender, and ethnicity report of August of this year indicates that the department with a total of 9906 sworn personnel have 50% Hispanic officers. In all, 70% of sworn personnel are minorities from Black, Asian, Hispanic, Filipino communities. 30% of those minority sworn personnel are police officer twos, a rank of officers who represent a large population in the operations field. It is the responsibility of the commission to make decisions based on objective facts and be an advocate of the department. Use the department programs that have already been in place for years and its officers as a model across the nation, and recognize that some of these officers are coming from the very same communities that they serve. The defunding is affecting these very communities. Our officers dedicate their life to help these communities, and as humans, they hurt when they see what is happening, essentially affecting their morale, their families, and the communities that they come from. This movement for racial equity has taken a shift and become the very thing that they're fighting against by attacking our officers and influencing elected officials to reimagine, quote unquote, the department and hurt our community. Removing funds from the department is already having a direct and negative impact on public safety. This year, we've seen an increase in homicides and increase in shootings. It makes no sense to reduce the resources in light of these increases. Prior to defunding, Los Angeles has achieved an unprecedented crime reduction, and we support Chief Moore and everything that he's doing, the Los Angeles Police Department, and we ask for the reallocation of the $150 million that were unfortunately redirected without any plans. I yield my time.
Thank you. And now we'll turn to our agenda, but before we do, Mr. Tiefang, can you please see that the link to the community meetings is distributed particularly to Mr. John Avalos, who says he's having trouble, I'm not sure why. And Chief, I would ask that you do an internal review with your team on the public records request regarding facial recognition, just to be assured that the department addressed each of those requests appropriately, since there were allegations that they weren't. I'm not asking you to obviously answer that now. It requires the team just to take a look to be sure that they were addressed appropriately, and consult with the city attorneys on that as appropriate. And I would ask commissioners that we refer the review of the facial recognition issues to the data subcommittee, which consists of Commissioner Bonner and myself. And with that, I'll turn to the regular agenda and call them up in order. The regular agenda.
Excuse me, Madam President, did you want me to read the comments?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Tiefang. I did ask you to remind me if I forgot, if you could give a brief summary, sir, of the written public comment that was received at the commission offices. Thank you, Mr. Tiefang.
Yes, Madam President. We received one comment relevant to item 2 and 3A. This comment is, I'm calling for the dismantling of LAPD's facial recognition system. This unacceptable invasion of privacy will not make the city any safer. And as revealed yesterday in the LA Times, LAPD has lied about their use of it and can be trusted neither with the data nor with the statements about how it is used. This writer spoke to item 3A on the agenda. I also object to a $50 million purchase of body cameras from Axon Group, as this is yet another example of the city backdooring money to the LAPD. I reject 24-hour surveillance of citizens, as well as we have seen time and again, just because something is caught on camera does not mean justice for the victims. It's just torture porn. We received 9 comments with the exact writing that I'll read now. LA Police Commission continues to try to silence the community by arbitrarily limiting the amount of time for comments from the public. This denies numerous citizens a right to participate. Sending emails to the commission limits access and gives preferential treatment to only those called on by President Decter. Suppression of public input must stop. Comment related to item 3G. LAPD continues to accept donations from the LA Police Foundation. City attorney must investigate them and reveal to the public who they are and the source of their money. Commissioner Kalanche's potential conflict of interest must be investigated. She receives CSP funds and as a police officer on her board of directors. One comment that is related to item 3E and 3G. First, I would like to comment on item G, it is incredibly important that LA Police Foundation be investigated. Until then, there can be no donations from them. On the report from the chief, I want to know what is going to happen to these officers. They need to be held accountable. They need to be fired. I would also like to comment on item E. It is so clear that there is a racial bias in LAPD. The LAPD is not and has never been racially unbiased. The LAPD has a lot of work to do on their own implicit bias and racial profiling before they ever go off and train others on this. We received 103 emails with the same writing. I'm asking to this commission to support a complete refunding of the Los Angeles Police Department. Removing funds from the department is already having a direct and negative impact on public safety. This year, Los Angeles is experiencing a 15% increase in homicides and a 10% increase in shootings. It makes no sense to reduce resources in light of these increases. Prior to defunding, Los Angeles had achieved unprecedented crime reductions. This commission and department has a responsibility to provide for public safety, and statistics show that you are failing at that. The victims of these crimes deserve better. The LAPD has a history of being innovative and nimble in implementing change. They have led the way initiating training, technology, and creating new ways to engage the community, all of which require resources. The CSP was created a decade ago, and independent research has proven its success. Other departments look to the LAPD as an example of how to improve their departments. I fully support Chief Moore and the LAPD and ask for the reallocation of the $150 million that were unfortunately redirected. Not reallocating these funds will result in the department further reducing its staffing and result in catastrophe. I urge you to defend, not defund the LAPD.
Thank you, Mr. Tiefank. I appreciate that. I did ask you to do that, and if I forgot to call on you to interrupt me, so thank you, sir. And I'll just note one final thing. When we started public comment, I noted there were 28 people in queue, and by my count, we completed 22 of that. So now on to the regular agenda items. I'll call up item 3A. By the way, commissioners, I should first ask, are there any questions from commissioners regarding item 3A? This is relative to an amendment to the body worn camera agreement. Commissioner questions before I call up, ask the secretary to bring up the department representatives. I see no questions, in which case then we will proceed on the item. The requested action is to approve the department's report and transmit to City Council. I will move that matter forward. Is there a second? I'm sorry, Commissioner Soboroff, can you unmute your, I saw you raise your hand as a second, but can we get this verbally? And all commissioners, please open your microphones for the vote, please.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No, it passes 5-0. Thank you very much. I'll move on to the next item, which is a grant application related to the Port Security Grant Program. Questions, commissioners? Questions? I don't. Commissioner Bonner, so yeah.
Question for the chief. As I'm reading the report, you have in terms of the cost, it shows the $750 covered by the feds and $250,000 match, I believe. And the question is, does the port, or has there ever been any conversation about the port reimbursing those costs? It's my understanding this is for security or for port infrastructure. And the question just is what the discussion, if any, has been about the allocation of the local match or covering the local match, excuse me.
Yeah, traditionally we seek to work with the port as we do with the airport for full recovery of any costs. And I believe Captain Valenzuela can address. I believe we are getting the 250. The 250 is being taken care of by the port police, but I would ask him for that question.
Captain, I see you've joined the panel. You need to unmute your microphone, Captain. There you go.
Yes, I'm sorry. What we do on this is a personnel matching, so it's not actually a cash. There will not be an outlay of money. Initially, in the past, we have requested a waiver of this 25% matching funds, and that has been approved in the past by through the grant program. However, if that waiver is not granted, the matching will be met through 25% of on-duty personnel. And I would have to dig a little deeper in terms of our ability to use port personnel, because we're the ones in charge of the grant to match the 25% of on-duty personnel. But as of this point, our plan, if that waiver is not met, would be to use our personnel to meet those personnel needs to account for the $250,000.
Great. Thank you. I understand the situation. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Other questions, commissioners? I don't see any other questions put forward. Thank you, Captain. Greatly appreciate it. The requested action on the port security grant is to approve the department's report and transmit concurrently to the mayor and to city council. I will move the matter forward. Is there a second? Again, commissioners, I need everyone to open their microphones just to be sure I can hear. Second, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Soboroff. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. The next item is related to the DNA Backlog Reduction Program grant. And I believe Mr. Jeffrey Thompson's in queue, if we could bring him up. And commissioners, may I ask, are there questions from other commissioners on this item? Just so I know. No, okay. Mr. Thompson?
Yes, I'm here.
Very good, thank you. Sir, I just wanted to do a follow-up on the DNA capacity. Just, it is my understanding that the DNA backlog for rape kits, that there is no backlog, and I just wanted to confirm that and just request a little more information on the focus of the grant and the backlog that will be addressed by it.
Yes, you're correct. There is no backlog. As the full name of the grant says, it's capacity enhancement and backlog reduction.
Yes.
And it's been made very clear by the granting agency that we can use the funds to preclude the growth of a backlog. In other words, by analyzing things, by making ourselves more efficient, more effective, faster turnaround times, then we preclude any backlog growing or occurring. And that's always been the focus of what we're doing, and we're using it for equipment over time. In this case, the main reason we restructured this particular grant is to move about $96,000 into supplies to kind of backfill what's happening with our current supply budget.
Understood. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Other questions before I bring the matter to a vote? I don't see any questions. The requested council action, or excuse me, the commission action is to approve the department's report and transmit concurrently to the mayor and city council. I'll move the matter forward. Is there a second? Again, commissioners, if you could open your microphone. Seconded by Commissioner Soboroff. And for the vote, there we go. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Again, passes 5-0. Our next three items, commissioners, are training grants of different natures. And I'm going to ask Commander Flores and Dr. Pennell to be brought forward to the panel. Commissioners, let's take D, E, and F together because it's the same individuals who will answer questions. So if you have questions on D, E, and F, I would ask that you address those to Commander Flores or Dr. Pennell, and then we'll take each individually for a vote. So Commissioner Kalanche, I see you have your microphone open. Did you want to ask questions?
Yes.
Thank you.
President Decker. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is more connected to E, which is the implicit bias training. I'm wondering if, and I know that I read the grant application and there is an evaluation component, but it seems that it's mostly after the completion of a training session. So I'm wondering if there's like a pre and post, maybe like a year or two later, to see if any type of biased stops or biased behavior is actually reduced? Or is it just the training and we just hope that the training works?
This is Dr. Pennell, and just to respond to that question, at present, we are still exploring the scope of what we are able to do with the technology, also recognizing that we have to at least predominantly we'll have LAPD officers attend and participate in this training, but we also have to open it up to outside agencies. So how to do that across the state in a uniform way is a good question. We might, I think, with just the online training itself, though, be able to incorporate a self-awareness and implicit bias test as a part of the course curriculum itself. But at least at present, as the grant is written and with the parameters that POST has given us, that's not within that scope. We'd probably have to look at other efforts internally in the department to do that.
Okay, if I may, just one follow-up. So then I'm wondering, one, how many officers actually participate annually? And then if there's any way to assess complaints or anything like that. Complaints versus folks that have taken the training.
Thank you. So to start with this, when COVID hit in March, we were not prepared to do distance learning like many agencies and universities across the country. We were scrambling. We haven't had the technology and the capacity to engage online learning as many of those entities have. And so certainly this would allow us the opportunity to not just have it for this training, but into the future. So it has some great potential and possibilities. These two grants, the one on de-escalation covers approximately 36 sessions, 25 officers each. And then the implicit bias procedural justice training is 24 sessions, 25 officers each. So again, this is our first effort at a distance learning modality. We want to learn from it and grow that capacity and look at how we could expand that into the future. But particularly since we had to stop all other training or most of it, we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to maybe in more frequently in smaller doses and more fairly across the whole department access people. And so I think it gives us some opportunities into the future as well.
Yes, I actually think that there might be a pretty simple way to track those that participated and then maybe do some correlation down the road to see if it actually is working. I would love for it to work. So I'm just trying to assess, like, how do we show that it's working?
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalanche. Have you concluded your questions? Yeah, okay. Commissioner Bonner.
Commissioner, we'll add that as a component of this. We'll just ask, we'll take a snapshot back 2 years from now and look at those officers who received the training and see what their experience is in regards to allegations of bias or other misconduct.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Bonner, I saw earlier you had your microphone open. Did you have questions on these items?
I did, yes, or I do. Thank you. First question, Dr. Pennell, is the content of the training that we're looking at here now, is the content the same as the prior courses, and just the only difference being that it's going to be online or distance learning?
I think we are hoping to enhance and build on where we've been before. So certainly we also know that in an online format, we can take advantage of interviewing community members or interviewing other experts and make that a part of a blended learning scenario where maybe 3 or 4 hours is self-directed and that they can access through an existing app that we have and be able to do that and then come to class in a more informed place where when they are engaging an outside instructor, we haven't formulated who the whole cadre is going to be and how that's going to work. We look to, I work with a professional advisory committee of educational experts and subject matter experts that I'm looking to as well to enhance the content of that area, and also just build from where we've been. So our implicit bias training specifically was very in depth with Dr. Marks. We did this 4-hour piece, and then we moved it into our police sciences and leadership. But we want to look at what can we do in an online format that is meaningful and helps to advance the discussion and also engage current discussions and national discussions.
And is the second question is on page 23 of the report, there's a discussion of how it's developed. It indicates that the training will be developed by subject matter experts within LAPD and other agencies. And the question is the content in the course always developed by law enforcement people? In other words, it talked a little bit about what how the perspective of, for lack of a better term, the average person who may be the subject of or feel that they're the subject of implicit bias. How is that perspective built into the course?
Certainly. Well, and again, as we leaned on an outside expert like Dr. Marks to bring it to us before, we would probably reach back to him. We still have a strong connection with him, but looking at what there's a few different areas. There's evidence-based policing is something that we're really trying to engage and look at what has been effective. And also, like, back to what I was saying about meaningful training, how do we engage that? But certainly, I think in the beginning stages, we want to reach out to other experts. I know that, Dr. Parham and people that we've engaged with to say, let's look at something maybe we haven't looked at before. We've also liked to look at other professions like nursing or the different fields that have also been impacted and been working on implicit bias training, and how we can recognize that this isn't just a law enforcement problem. How do we look at our part of understanding implicit bias so that we can serve better?
So that all of that speaks to, if I'm understanding it correctly, speaks to how you would engage other experts outside of LAPD and potentially outside of policing. And what I'm asking is, how does the process capture, input from an average person who's not an academic, who's not a professional trainer, who's not packaging, these things professionally, but is, just the perspective of the person on the street. And one, aside from just the general principle that I think that should be included, the other reason I'm asking is because of the number of situations where you have a disagreement between the person who complains or alleges that they were the subject of implicit bias and how I think sometimes there's a sense that if somebody reviews the tape and doesn't see some actual evidence of implicit bias, that therefore there must not have been any. And my own personal view is that in many cases, this is really a function of how these interactions are perceived by the person. So that's why I'm saying that an average person on the street, their perception of bias and how they're experiencing it may likely vary from the perspective of a detective or someone who's been in law enforcement for 30 years or an academic who's been in a classroom for 30 or 40 years. So give me some assurance that that there's a mechanism or a means for getting just kind of real-time street level input in these experiences.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of the things that we have been doing through the historical project is interviewing on camera different community members who are voicing their historical experience with LAPD, but also current experiences with LAPD. And some of those differences are coming up. And so I think it would be our intent to use some of those videos to be able to incorporate into the learning objectives as we go through, and to enhance that community voice from a community perspective. So, and certainly if, we'll look at the different video that we've already collected, but potentially we'll be doing more videos than just that.
Thank you. One other question, and this is about distance learning, and this is an online course essentially. Am I correct on that?
It'd be through an app, yes.
Right. So for a commissioner who's interested in actually understanding what the course actually consists of, I'm just saying that it seems more practical in this situation that I could have a link where I could actually see this course. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. And I'm wondering also relative on page 22, there's a discussion kind of some of the content, and I'm not crystal clear really on how much of this is kind of the game plan and how much of it is the actual course. But I noted, for example, that in the breakout of the amount of time spent on the various issues, there's all of 5 minutes that is allocated to implicit bias and how it potentially affects the holder of that bias. And so one just has this question about if, to the degree to which implicit bias is driven by individual perspectives and biases and beliefs, at least the way that I'm reading this, there's about 5 minutes of discussion where the person who may hold the bias is really evaluated in that context. And the other is about the topic generally and some other cues about how it may be avoided and so on and so forth. So some of this may be cleared up after I actually get to see the, if you can send me that link and I can see the course, but I just flagged it. That strikes me as a curiosity as to how that fleeting amount of time is allocated to that particular part of the course.
Sir, I think that might be explained for the time that it takes to do the implicit bias online test. The implicit bias, the IAT is a very quick online piece. The further discussions that would come about that would be much expanded. And so we'll make sure that certainly we want this training to be meaningful and to enhance where we've been before. And so we'll flesh all of that out. We are still, because we haven't received the grant yet, we haven't even kind of touched on the design phase. And I'm sure that as we talk to experts and people in the field who are well versed on this, I think some of that will become fleshed out where we spend the bulk of our time.
So when you mentioned that the grant has not been forthcoming yet, but so then in my idea of actually observing or seeing the online course, when would that really be generally? Is that something that I wouldn't really expect to do until the end of the year, till next year, or I was misunderstanding also that there maybe that this was not entirely new, that maybe there was some existing program that's available, but if that's not the case, when would that opportunity really present?
That is accurate. We have existing curriculum, but that is a ways from actual turnkey implementation and getting comfortable with the learning domain and or learning capacity of distance learning. So I would anticipate that we would be ready by the end of the year and then be able to implement by then. Or sorry, that we would be ready to show you the curriculum by the end of the year and then implement in the new year.
Okay, I appreciate that. Then lastly, I'd just say kind of addressing one of the questions from Commissioner Kalanche about the potential correlation between those who have gone through the training and those who are not. I observe, I know there was a complaint report that was on our agenda that's been moved, or I presume will be coming up. And I believe, and someone else can speak to what that cycle actually is, but I believe it's an annual report that we get, and there's been some discussion about how to make sure that it's as impactful as possible and so on. So I just, between the commissioner's question and the chief's commitment to kind of follow through a little bit, that I just would encourage some thinking about the broad topic we've had about that report generally is how we can really make the complaint report as insightful but impactful as possible. And this strikes me as an opportunity while that question's on the table to potentially look and see how, when we're under the hood and turning through the data, how we potentially can build in some way of seeing how much of these complaints may relate to people who've been through this training and potentially some others that that officers go through.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner. You've concluded, Commissioner Bonner? Okay. And Dr. Pinnell, Commander Flores, I suspect there are 5 commissioners who would like a link to that program. So if you wouldn't mind coordinating with Mr. Teefank when available. And secondly, Dr. Pinnell, I would ask, I'm sure you're doing this, but I just want to confirm, there have been some recent academic studies done on implicit bias training, what has worked, and significant significantly, what hasn't. I assume you're keeping up with all of those academic analytical analyses of how to become more effective, and a serious critique of past implicit bias trainings and what has not been working and what hasn't resonated, not just in the law enforcement profession, but in many professions. I assume you're taking a look at that, but can you confirm with me on that point?
Absolutely. That's one of the discussions that I frequently bring in front of my professional advisory committee. In the past, even after we did the training with Dr. Marks, they did a full literature review at that time. And as we embark on this new effort, we will be looking at that again and kind of looking at the updates since the last literature review that we did.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate, I think what was the final point of Commissioner Bonner, because we will be having that report, the annual complaint report, returned to us in, I think, approximately 2 weeks or so. And I do expect that at that time, the commission will be asking a number of questions regarding the bias policing complaints and what more can be done to address those and ensure that not only that there's training, but that on the investigation side, that we are all comfortable that a full review and analysis is being done on both sides of the equation, the training and then the ultimate investigation when complaints are filed. So just in anticipation of that. But commissioners, D, E, and F, are there any other questions from commissioners, D, E, and F? If not, thank you. Commander Flores, Dr. Pinnell, thank you very much for attending today and being available to answer questions. With that, commissioners, I'll call each item up one at a time, and I ask you to open your microphones for the votes. Item D, the requested action is to approve the department's report and transmit concurrently to the mayor and city council. I will move that forward. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Kalanche. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. Thank you very much. Item E, the department's report related to post-distance learning grant program, implicit bias, and racial profiling. The recommended action is to approve the department's report, transmit concurrently to the mayor and city council. I'll move that matter forward. Is there a second? Commissioners?
Second.
Commissioner Soboroff has seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes 5-0. And item F, the requested board action on this revolving training fund report to approve the department's report, transmit to city council. I will move it forward. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Soboroff. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Kalanche, was that an aye?
Sorry, yes, aye.
Thank you. All opposed? None. It passes 5-0 as well. We'll move on then to item G. Are there commission questions regarding item G, donation of approximately $1,000? Commissioners, questions?
No question.
No questions. Seeing no questions, I will move to approve the department's report and accept the donation. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Soboroff. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes 5-0. That concludes the regular agenda. Madam Secretary, will now go into closed session, please.
Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss agenda item 4A1 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Thank you very much. All right, good afternoon, almost good afternoon. We have concluded our closed session. Commissioner Goldsmith was with us, as was, Commissioner Bonner has not yet returned. I will only say Commissioner Goldsmith was with us, and he had to leave and won't be returning. We do have a quorum, so we can proceed. And here's Commissioner Bonner now, who is also in the closed session. Mr. Tiefenk, would you do a readout of closed session, please?
Yes, Madam President. Commission has concluded its work in closed session. Item 4A1, non-tactical unintentional discharge number 052-19. Commission unanimously on a 5-0 vote adopted the recommendations of the Chief of Police, which were tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 2, drawing and exhibiting does not apply, unintentional discharge, administrative disapproval, negligent discharge, 1 police officer 2. That concludes the readout.
Thank you very much. The only matter remaining on our agenda is the adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It is moved. I will second it. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. It passes. We stand adjourned until our next meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.